This is the one that you have been waiting for. For the last few weeks, last few months, we have all been wondering what is going on with George St-Pierre. If you recall, a few months ago, he came on this program, said that he was itching to get back. He wanted to get back, did his little training camp, and he was ready to resume his fighting career. Since then, we haven't heard a ton from him, but we have heard from UFC President Dana White, countless interviews telling us he doesn't have that fire. He doesn't want to fight again. He's seen fighters, Dana has said. George isn't one anymore. Great career. It just doesn't feel like it's there, at least in his eyes. Well, we want to hear from the source. We want to hear from the guy. And after a lot of work, George has agreed to come on the show. So joining us right now via the phone is the one and only George Rush St-Pierre. How about this? George, are you there?
Hi, Ariel. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry. I know you wanted to talk to me earlier, and a lot of reporters actually asked me to do an interview earlier, but I couldn't make any comment because of what was going on. And now I'm giving you the exclusivity, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Us Montreal guys, I think we have to stick together in this crazy world of MMA. So, merci beaucoup à vous.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is the big question. We want to know what's going on. Like I said, I laid it out. You told us that you were interested in coming back. You were in negotiations. Yeah. There were a few things. Dana White has said his things. Where do you stand right now?
Well, right now, I'm free agent. You hear it right. I'm free agent. My lawyer terminate the contract with the UFC.
Wow. So you are no longer tied to the UFC.
Well, what happened is, to make a long story short, is last February, I told Lorenzo that I wanted to fight again. We had a meeting in Vegas, and I came with my agent. And I told him that I wanted to fight again. And since February, we've been in my team was in negotiation with Lorenzo's. Many names were offered and in different UFC 200 New York, but we thought the best date was the Toronto date. So that's one of the main reasons I entered the USADA testing, to have my 4 months prior testing. And we had up and down, it's not always been good. How negotiations are, it doesn't end up in only an hour. It goes back. And so, we had some agreement, some disagreement, and I remember even at some time, UFC told us that they would take a huge financial risk to have me back, and they would need to spend a lot of money to reintroduce me to the new audience. You know what I mean? So it's just to tell you in what mindset they were and what mindset we were. And what we asked for is really, trust me, it's really reasonable. Well, so the negotiation, we were making compromise on both sides. I think we were close to an agreement at some point towards the end until a big news arrived, and the news was the UFC got sold to new owners, and we were told that everything was put on ice until the new owners take charge. So we waited for weeks without any news from the new owners. Finally, the news came. The new owners told that Lorenzo's offer was off the table. And so it was like a shock for us because we felt like we were making progress. We're almost there. And when he told us there, I got angry, and I talked to my advisor, and I'd like to hire the best lawyer in the business. His name is James Quinn. He's the man that's not on your side in that type of situation. And James Quinn gave them a legal deadline because I already have a contract with UFC. It's a 2011 contract. So he gave them a deadline to give me a fight because I wanted to fight. Even during that deadline, I remember we didn't have any news, no email, and I was always waiting for phone calls And I heard Dana was saying in the media during that time that I didn't want to fight, that I didn't have it in me. I know it's probably a strategy for his part, but I didn't have any news until the last day of the deadline, very late at night, believe it or not. And we received a 4 letter saying, they were supposed to schedule us a fight. That's what we were waiting for. But they sent us a letter saying, if I was interested of fighting Robbie Lawler sometime. And I knew that Robbie Lawler pulled off of New York card because of I don't know the reason, but he was out of New York card. And I heard the interview by Mono at the wall. He said he needed a long break. So the next day, my lawyer, James Quinn, told me, George, now you're a free agent, you're free. So that's how everything happened.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Did you feel like you were very close to a deal? Like it was just, at the goal line, so to speak, with Lorenzo? Did you feel like you were going to get it done had they not sold the company?
Well, I thought we were closer, and we were really closer because what we asked, the minimum we could go, and it's very, very reasonable. It's even lower than most of the magazine. Like I read the Forbes magazine and everything. It's even lower than what they think I deserve, for the general people that knows. So I really thought, I felt like a little bit like a yo-yo. And it was some rumor going on sometime, me fighting Lawler, then Bisping, then Woodley. And I'm not the kind of guy that, I've talked about it before. I'm a little bit OCD. When I think I got a fight coming up, everything I do, when I sleep, I think about it. When I drive, I train, I think about it 24. So I get very affected mentally by it because I really thought I was going... Like every time things were changing, so I was getting ready mentally to fight a certain guy, and I was very excited in a way. But then after things were not happening, so that's why I hired James Quinn. I think I just drained, of all that thing,
Okay, so at that point, you're in the point of, you say, okay, you have 2 weeks, they come back. How do you determine that they are in breach of contract, that the contract is now up, and have you notified them, or is this the first time that they're hearing that you consider yourself a free agent? Like, are you guys leaving on good terms here, or are you expecting this, to go down a certain path?
No, for me, it's not emotional, and it's purely business. I don't, people that misunderstand sometimes. I'm doing this because of the best of my interest. I don't dislike the UFC. UFC do what they do for the best of their interest. Dana White, he's the best promoter in the world, Ariel. He is the greatest of all time. We wouldn't make that for a living. We wouldn't make mixed martial art for a living if it would not be for Dana White. We owe Dana White that. He did that for all of us. He took the UFC when it was small. He took it and he raised the bar for every one of us. But now in this situation, unfortunately, he's against me because of the business interest. I don't dislike Dana White. It's because of a big part of what I do and what I have earned. It's because of Dana White. Dana White is so good. He can take, for example, he can organize a fight between Hulk and Mother Teresa and make people believe it's going to be an even fight and make people believe that they need to see that fight. He's so good at promoting. He's the best in the world. And when he says something, everybody believes it, and that's how good he is. When he's saying that I'm not ready to fight, there's only one person who knows if I'm ready to fight, and it's myself. Dana White doesn't know what it is to be a fighter. I know what it is to be a fighter. I'm a fighter, and I will always stand and support fighter, and I know what it is. I started fighting in UFC. I made 3,000 plus 3,000 in the beginning, and I was working in UFC 46, and I was working 2 jobs in the same time. So I know what is the grind. I've been there. I'm not born rich, and I didn't rob nobody to be where I am right now. I made my way, and I worked very hard, and I'm very proud of it.
So when you hear Dana White say in countless interviews that you don't want to fight anymore, that he knows what a fighter looks like, and that's not you anymore, that you're stringing along sponsors, all this stuff, how are you reacting to that at home when you see this stuff?
I'm very disappointed of everything, but I think in the position that I am, I'm in a great position in a way because I got out so far healthy and wealthy. And I have a lot of options. Back in the day, I was, if you talk about the fighter, most fighter in UFC, they are starving. And for UFC, it's very easy when you keep a lot of your staff starving. They are easier to control. If you look in other sport like NBA, NFL, and NHL, the revenue athlete owner are about 50-50. But if you look in UFC, athletes make less than 10%. And it's unfortunate because it's unfortunate for us, for fighters, because a lot of the fighters, they don't have the option that I have. Now I have the option to stem, and I've never been afraid, like the performance and enhancing drug problem, I've never been afraid to stand for what I believe is right.
You still there?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I think the phone cut. Yes, I've never been afraid to stand for what I believe is right. You know what I mean? I'm very sad for not be fighting in Toronto. I'm very disappointed of how where we have to go now. But for my situation, I have no choice to do it for the best of my interest. So it's not personal. It's in business, I don't think you need to like the person you do business with. Even if the UFC doesn't like my team, my agent, they could make business with them. I truly believe it would have been a win-win scenario if I would have fought in Toronto. They would have made a lot of money. I would make good money. It would be win-win scenario. But unfortunately, because it's not happening, I'm losing. I believe UFC is losing, but the biggest loser in all that is the fans.
Did you try to sit down with Dana White or perhaps Ari Emanuel or even Lorenzo Fertitta, who we heard closed the deal with Chris Weidman a couple weeks ago, face-to-face to try to clear the air? Was that ever discussed?
They never called me, but a lot of things have been said in the media, and I mean, I feel sometimes, I try to not take these things personal, but I feel a little bit attacked on a personal level when things are saying like that, like saying I'm trying to manipulate the system and stuff like that. Because I truly believe that at one point I truly believe in what I stand for. I truly believe that what we ask is totally reasonable. And for me, it's completely illogical that this fight, the fight did not happen in Toronto, because we would have been both winners. Have been winners on both sides, and now instead of that, we're all losers, especially the fans. We're all losers.
Yeah.
I believe if Lorenzo was still there, it would have been maybe different because we were making a lot of progress towards the end when we were talking to Lorenzo. But when the new owner came, all the offers were off the table. So it was like a big step back, and we were, it was insulting.
And so I wonder why Lorenzo didn't come in like he did with Chris Weidman, but I guess that's something that we'll never know. When you were on the show back in, I believe, June, you said that there were some roadblocks, things in your contract that need to be discussed. You mentioned, the uniform, the Reebok. With Lorenzo, were all those things addressed and conquered? Did you feel like you were getting a good deal, that you were comfortable with what was being offered?
Yes, we were. That's where I need to be careful in what I'm saying. But my lawyer can go and explain this.
Okay.
Because it's legal terms, and if I get involved into this, it could mess up things. But yes, all these things, all the legal problems, like you just mentioned, were going to, they were taken care, and then there were talks with Lorenzo. You know, like it was more. We felt that it was more a cooperative with Lorenzo, and when we talked to the new owner, it was like a total different story. Everything was off the table, like.
Right. When they say things like they have to take a financial hit, they have to reintroduce you to the crowd, what is your reaction to that?
For me, like I said, I don't take it personal. I found it actually a little bit funny, to tell you the truth, because you know I know it's a lie, but sometimes I really believe. I'm starting to asking myself if they believe what they're saying, if they're so caught up into what they're saying and they start believing it. I'm pretty confident, Ariel, that if I would have go fight in Toronto, I'm pretty confident that I would have sold the Toronto stadium in a few minutes. I'm that confident. I'm sure the fans have not forgot about me. I'm sure it would have been a great success. And I'm very disappointed of what happened. But in the same time, I'm disappointed, and now I'm you know, I felt a little bit like a yo-yo. It took a lot of energy, and now I decide to that's why I hire my lawyer, to free myself.
So do you want to pursue other deals? Do you want to keep fighting? Are you interested in fighting for a different promoter now?
Well, we'll see what's going to happen. Now I just announced the big news on your show.
Thank you.
I give you the exclusivity, like I promised, and now we'll see what's going to happen. And in mixed martial art, everything is a question of timing. Everything can happen. Like I try to see things in a logical way, not in an emotional way. And I have a great team of advisor, and I'm trying to listen to them. Me, I'm a fighter. Business. This kind of business is not my area of expertise. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to really listen to what my advisor tell me.
Right. How do you think?
It's hard for me, Ariel, because I started fighting in UFC 46 a long time ago. So for me, UFC being like a family for me. Now I enter a territory that is very unknown. I don't know what's going to happen.
So that being said, if this ends up being the end, now that you've come back from 167 and you say, you took a break and you said you wanted to sort of, put a pause on your career, but then you go back and you get the itch again and you start training and you say, okay, I want to come back and I want to fight in Toronto. Like mentally, you have now redevoted your life to it. If this is the end, how will you react to that? Will you be at peace with that? Or do you feel like now that you've recommitted yourself to MMA that you need to keep fighting?
I've said in the past that all the things that I regret the most in life is the thing that I have not done. And the reason why I wanted to go back and fight is because I feel right now that I'm at my best. And I have something, I'm truly confident I can beat the guys that are champion right now. I'm that confident. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? At least I'm a free man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now I know I'm free and I have other options. I'm not caught up in legally with a contract. I'm a free man.
How do you think that they're going to react?
It leaves more options.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying.
How do you think that they're going to react to this? If you do get offers that you like, do you think that they're going to stand in your way? Are you preparing yourself for, like a Randy Couture type of situation? Or do you think it's going to be like a Chael Sonnen situation where you can go and do whatever you want?
I really don't know. I mean, I enter really unknown territory right now. I never been in this situation before. Okay. I'm going to listen to my team of advisor, and see what they believe is the best move, and we'll go from there. We'll see.
You mentioned, being a fighter and standing with the fighters. As you know, this year, unions, associations, a very hot topic. How do you feel about that? And And if there was one in place, do you feel like you would be more protected in a situation like this?
Well, like I said, I'm always on the fighter's side, and I will always support the fighter, and also I will always support all serious initiative that can help fighters. Because it's sad. If I look at myself, I consider myself very lucky, very blessed, because I'm healthy and I'm wealthy, and I have the power because of the position that I am. I have the option of saying no. A lot of these guys that are fighting, they don't have this option like I was before, and I understand because I've been there before. So it's up to guys like me, Conor McGregor, Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, guys that are big names, to stand for these guys that doesn't have these options. And it's unfortunate because what we do, it's not a game. I mean, it's very dangerous. A lot of these guys, they can come out of it because they're pursuing their dreams. And a lot of these guys, I would say most of these guys, they will get out of this business with, they will be broke mentally, physically, and financially, unfortunately, as the situation is right now. So it's very unfortunate, and you know what I mean? For me right now, I like I said, I always support for the fighters.
Have any of these groups reached out to you to join them?
No. I mean, things right now are like, I know a lot of things are happening, but right now there's thing I cannot comment on.
Okay. Speaking of Jose Aldo, he said recently that he was told by Dana White that you asked for $10 million to fight Conor McGregor. Michael Bisping said that you were asking for too much to fight him. Is that true?
Well, no, the 10 million is not true because it's been. I've read the article. This is not true that we asked for 10 million. Like I said, and I read the article in Forbes magazine. What we asked, it was not 10 million, but it was. Trust me, it was very, very reasonable. And Michael Bisping have said that I try to overprice myself. I just hope one thing for Michael Bisping, and I like Michael Bisping, and I know that Michael Bisping sold out the Manchester Arena in less than 5 minutes. I just hope that he was well taken care of for that. Because he deserves to be well taken care of. And I hope if he said that about me, I hope because he took a hell of a damage in his last fight, and congratulations to him, he did an amazing job. But I just hope he was compensated as much as he deserved for that. That's the only thing I can say. And I'm not sure if he was, but I hope he was.
Okay. He also passed you on the all-time wins list. Given the time which this happened, does that kind of add salt to your wounds that right now you can't, keep pushing that and pass him and be the all-time wins leader in UFC history?
That's one thing I was very proud into UFC. It was my record of win. I had the most win into UFC, but he surpassed me. And Michael Bisping is a guy that I really respected. He's a hard worker. You know what I mean? And I'm sincerely very happy for him. You know what I mean? For what he has done. He's a guy that's been always very outspoken against performance-enhancing drug. And I'm very happy for the guy. And you know what I mean? And like I said, I had many offers on the table. At one point, it was Michael Bisping, and I thought it was going to happen. But now that everything that just happened, when my lawyer told me that I'm free, it shut down a little bit of my option, my drive, to challenge people, and I feel a little bit now that I need vacation a little bit from all that, because I've been on a stress recently, Ariel. I really thought I was going to fight. Then they told me I was not. Then I thought I was going to fight. Then I felt a little bit like a yo-yo. So now I just need to step out of it and relax. Because I felt it's emotionally draining for me.
Sure.
Because I thought because I heard the rumor on like everybody else on the internet. So at one point I thought it's gonna happen. I get excited and I talked to my trainer. Okay, we're gonna train for this guy. We're gonna bring this sparring partner. So I was preparing myself. I was preparing the infrastructure of my camp if it would happen. But that's how I am. I'm crazy. I'm thinking about it 24/7, and it drained a lot of energy out of me. So now I just feel like I feel a little bit disappointed. I need to step out the light a little bit. I'm so
sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I have my own gym, and now everywhere a secret place where I can train without being bothered by nobody. I have a crazy good infrastructure right now, and I could have prepared myself very well, and now I just feel like everything is shut down.
Considering that, if the UFC calls your team tonight and says, "Look, we want to start over. Here's the deal. You guys like a deal?" Are you open to fighting for them again, or do you think the damage is done, and as of right now, you're not interested in that?
Like everything can happen. I'm not. It's not an emotional. I try to not be emotional. I have done this move. I hired James Quinn, my lawyer, to terminate the contract with UFC. And he terminated the contract with UFC because I wanted to give myself more options, it's for the best of my interest, and I try to do everything logical. Everything can happen. In business, everything can happen.
Before that fight against Johnny Hendricks, you were, campaigning to have more drug testing. You wanted a lot of things to change in the sport. Are you content, the fact that you were interested in coming back, that you were close to coming back, are you content with the state of the sport? And that includes everything from drug testing and just the way the fighters treat. I know you talked about, fighters getting paid more and things like that, but do you feel like the sport for 2016, given the fact that it's now 23 years old, do you feel like it's in a good place, or are you still disappointed about certain things? And if so, what are they?
Well, it's much better than it was. And that's why it took a long time before I came back. I wanted to make sure the system was in place and was strong. It's much better than it was, Ariel, but it's not perfect. Just look what happened with Brock Lesnar. They give an exemption. They still do a little bit what they want. I think for the performance enhancing drug problem, they should not have gray area. It should be white or black, no gray area. Everybody should be treated the same without exception. I think that's the way it should be, because when you start to give free pass to people, now you start to have corruption and problems. And I think it shouldn't be that way. That's what I truly believe. But it is much better than it was before.
As you know, a trend has been building. Anderson spoke up recently, Jose Aldo, Ally Quinta. What you're saying here, do you feel like there's a troubling trend building here? Is the UFC not doing a good enough job, in your opinion, of keeping its stars happy?
Well, I can only speak for myself. And for my situation, I really felt like they missed the boat. I really feel like I said, it could have been a win-win situation. If it's only win on one side, it's not good. You want to make both sides happy. And when you have a company and the employee are happy, everybody is happy. The fans are happy. You don't want to be only the owners happy. So I think it's important that both sides are happy.
Okay. So let's wrap this up. In conclusion, in your heart of hearts, do you think you ever fight again, or is it too soon to say?
I was very pumped up a few weeks ago when we talked, and now I'm not as pumped up as I was. Like I said, I'm entering unknown water now, unknown territory. I just don't know what's gonna happen. We'll see what's gonna happen. I mean, we'll have some news, I'm sure, pretty soon, and we'll see.
A lot of people watching this, a lot of fans, I think, especially the Canadian ones, disappointed that you won't be on that Toronto card. And I don't know if you noticed, but for a long time on the website, it listed, TBD versus TBD as the main event. Even Daniel Cormier himself was hoping that you would be the main event. To those Canadian fans in particular and your fans worldwide, what is the message to them?
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, like I said, I would have... To do it, it would have been a win-win situation, but and I think now with what happened, the biggest loser in this situation are the fans. I'm a loser. UFC is a loser. Even the UFC is a loser. They would have made a good match. I'm pretty confident that they don't need to reintroduce me to the new audience. I'm pretty confident that I can sell the hell out of theater easily. But like they see it in a different way. So unfortunately, it is what it is. Ariel, I'm not as optimistic as I was before. I'm sorry for my fans. Only the future will tell what's gonna happen. And now I'm gonna need to take a little break. This whole thing take a lot out of me.
Yeah.
A lot of I've been drained a little bit emotionally. I was waiting. Every time I receive a call, I was running to my phone, check if it was my agent or UFC or if it was good news. I was very emotionally involved. I was waiting for good news. I was trying to stay optimistic, but now I'm not really optimistic right now.
Last question for you. What do you do now? I know you say you want to break, but what are you preparing for? Are you preparing for a ton of offers to come in? Are you sitting down with your team tonight? Like what do the next few days this week look like for you after making this announcement?
Well, I'm going to stay in shape and healthy. Personally, I got a little bit sick. I got a... I got a cold and a lung infection. I think I was stressed. So when you're stressed, you don't sleep as well, and your immune system is down. And I think that's one of the reasons also that I got. It's the season too. It doesn't help. Everybody is sick, so I think I need to take some time to take care of myself.
Okay. Well, I hope that happens soon. I hope you get well soon. Lord knows I bother you enough, George, and I appreciate you sticking to your word and coming on the show. It's not as positive news, as you said, as when you were on the show a few months ago. I think we were all very excited about the prospect of you returning. And I think I speak for everyone when I say we hope that this somehow gets resolved and we get to see you compete again, because I think people really love to watch you fight. So I hope in some way you are happy with how this turns out, that you get what you want, that you get what you deserve. And
well, Ariel, this is a universal business. When you're going into a negotiation, you need to be ready to walk away. And I will never be afraid to stand for what I believe is right. That's all I can say.
Well said, George. I think a lot of people will respect that just as much, if not more, than anything you did inside a cage. So kudos to you, my friend. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for your time, and good luck with this. Again, I hope it turns out the way you want it to.
Thank you, and sorry for the fans, man. I don't know what to say.
All right. Well, thank you, George. Thank you, and all the best to you. There he is. Wow. What do you say about that? Arguably the greatest of all time. If you don't consider him number one, surely you consider him two, if not three, tops. You can make a very strong case that he is the greatest of all time. Coming on the show and for 30 minutes laying it out, as he has been known to do over the last few years, turning into one of the more riveting and fascinating interviews in our sport. George St-Pierre telling the world that he is now a free agent. That according to his lawyer, James Quinn of New York, the UFC is in breach of their contract. They were given a 2-week sort of deadline. Came back with a fight against Robbie Lawler. Nothing more. Nothing more was addressed. Close as far as negotiations were concerned with Lorenzo Fertitta. And then the new ownership group came in, and for whatever reason, it dissolved. Now, of course, it's important to remember 2 sides to every story. Often there are 3 and 4. Our team has reached out to the UFC. You want to get their thoughts on it? You have to get their thoughts on it. That's the only fair thing to do. And curious to hear what they have to say about this. But hopefully, and maybe it won't happen, but hopefully this can put to rest the notion that GSP didn't want to fight, that he was stringing us along, that he was stringing along sponsors. This, to me, sounded like a man who wanted to fight. This, to me, sounded like a man who was very disappointed that he won't be fighting on December 10th in front of his fellow Canadians. This, to me, sounded like a man who was somewhat, bummed out by the whole process and wanted to go on vacation to forget about it all. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's dead. Doesn't necessarily mean that his career is over. Doesn't necessarily mean that his UFC career is over. I think George did a great job of keeping that door open by not pouring salt on any wounds, by not burning any bridges. But clearly, as of right now, there's nothing to show for it. Negotiations have failed, and according to his legal team, he's a free man. And this is something, not too different. Now, Chael went about it a different way, but Chael's situation wasn't the same. But of course, out of left field, he's a free agent and he signs with Bellator. The times, they are changing, my friends. The sport is evolving in front of our eyes. As I've been saying time and again, a lot of things are changing, have changed, will change. Speaking of which, what you follow people on Twitter, you hear from enough things. I think our own Dave Meltzer spoke about it. There are a lot of people in Las Vegas at Zuffa HQ who are worried about the state of their jobs. Anyone who believed that a new ownership group would come in, buy the company for that much money, and just keep it status quo, you were fooling yourself. Same thing that happened with Strikeforce when they were purchased by Zuffa. Same thing that happens in every business across the world when there's a takeover of sorts, when it's bought out. And many people are believing that that time may be coming this week, that there are a lot of layoffs coming, that there are a lot of duplicate jobs. And from what I've been told from countless sources, now people want to speak, that the morale there isn't great, that something needs to be done soon. People need to know the fate of their jobs. All this to say that a lot is changing, and that is to be expected. And that's not necessarily a knock on the new ownership. They buy it, they want to change it, they can't change it overnight. These things take time, especially when you're talking about, a multi-million-dollar industry, billion-dollar industry. These things take time. Of course, for the families, the fathers, the mothers who are providing for their families, they want things to happen right away. They want to know the fate of their jobs. It's unfortunate. So this will affect the employees who we often forget about. There are, I think, 300 or so people who work for Zuffa across the world. And this will affect the fighters as well. And you saw it right there. George St-Pierre saying that with Lorenzo it was close, new ownership group comes in, it ain't close anymore. And you wonder why Weidman was able to sit down with Lorenzo Fertitta and he was used as some kind of mediator, and this wasn't done with George. You wonder. A fascinating story to add to what has been the most newsworthy year in the history of this sport. And guess what? There's still 2.5 months left. There's still MSG. There's still the return of Ronda Rousey. What happens to that Toronto card now? Does it just remain intact? Do they add another big fight, a title fight? Who knows? But the times, they are changing, and it is a fascinating time to cover the sport. And again, I thank very much George St-Pierre and his team for coming on the show and breaking that news and giving us some kind of update from his perspective. Now the ball goes back into the UFC's court, and we want to hear what they have to say. And hopefully it can be done in a professional and truthful manner, and we could get the real story about what's going on. I always thought, look, he just told us since February they had been negotiating. There were talks. To imply that there was no interest, to me, was a little disingenuous. I don't think that. I know sometimes you have to protect your interest, and that's the way things go in sports, in the public eye. Personally, would have done it a different way. Let's bring in New York Rick here, get his perspective on what has been going on, get his perspective on the GSP story. Mr. New York Rick, are you there?
I'm here.
Your immediate reaction. Now, you have been hounding me. You have been almost harassing me about this GSP news. I kept you in the dark, and I had to. I had to.
Did you?
You're Loose Lips McGee over there. Your immediate reaction to what he had to say to this news?
tempered because we don't know the other side of it. We don't know. So he declared himself a free agent, but we don't know what that actually means. There's still much to be seen here. That said, this is not something that would have happened, any other time. So it's the biggest, possible news for every other organization out there. Because let's assume that GSP is still under contract and he's not a free agent. There is some kind of binding agreement or something like that. I don't know if he doesn't want to fight for the organization, at least as far as what I can tell from what he's saying. They likely would want him, but he wouldn't, probably be the ideal employee. So everybody else in the game has to be kind of licking their lips.
It's funny that you use the word employee, by the way, as that has been a hot topic. And I know what you mean when you say that, but here's an important thing to remember. And I get your tempered response. This is not a guy who woke up this morning and said, you know what, I'm a free agent today. This is a guy who went and look up James Quinn, as I did as he was talking. Look up who he represents. Look up his history. These lawyers don't get paid a lot of money to, make decisions that aren't based in fact.
And also what we know about GSP is he's very measured. He's not going to come out and just say something that likely cannot be backed up. So
trust me, I've been trying to get him on the show for quite some time.
I think that ultimately what we are leading to is GSP being a completely free agent and being fair game for other organizations. Now, at the end, he did say he lost a bit of that fire.
Yeah, that is
to fight, which is interesting, because you would think that when you're on the verge of free agency and when the market's going to be open for you, you should be talking about how the fire is still there and you want to be,
But you can understand why he's a little defeated, a little deflated.
It's the ultimate honesty. He's being completely honest. He's run down. He's tired. This back and forth has gotten him tired. But it's interesting if you're another organization to look at it and say, I don't want to hear that he lost his fire. I want to hear that I'm getting the very best GSP that we've ever had. And I think that the time off from actually fighting, even though I know he's training, will ultimately he'll probably be in a pretty good place physically when he does or does not decide to come back. But if he does, this is huge news, and it's going to be a whole new ballgame.
Okay, now let me ask you this, because another interesting thing that he said was the UFC claimed that they believe they have to reintroduce him to the audience. How much value, in your opinion, does George St-Pierre have in October of 2016? In other words, if you're Bellator or any other organization, are you essentially giving him a blank check because he redefines your organization? He now all of a sudden gives you a brand new identity because he is arguably the greatest of all time and still very much in his prime.
I think it's very difficult to kind of measure this just because this is new. This is not something that's happened before. Now,
but do you think GSP still holds, that respect? Do people still want to see him fight?
I do, but I also think that the promotion, the organization matters in this equation. It's not as simple as does GSP still have the juice? It's does GSP still have the juice, and can that organization squeeze every bit of it out of him? Because I don't know that there's somebody out there that could leverage GSP the same way that the UFC could to make it worthwhile. Now, again, we don't know what kind of numbers he's talking about. It seemed like he's saying it's not 10 million and that it's lower than that, but we don't know what this actual number is that he would need to fight. I don't think there's enough of a track record to really say at this point. This would be uncharted territory, as he said several times. In fact, he used that terminology a lot about it being uncharted territory.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's enough evidence to say this superstar is established. We've got him, possibly the best ever, and now we're transporting him to another organization. Will people tune in? I don't know. It's never been done, so I don't know.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, of course, the first thought has to be Bellator, right? They are the number 2. Yep. They have the deepest pockets. They're owned by Viacom. They have been very active this year in free agency. If Bellator signed George St-Pierre, and when you consider the fact that they also have signed, could you imagine? I mean, what the heck? 2016, they also have Roy McDonald.
Yeah.
They signed George St-Pierre and bring him, and they don't even need it, but if they do bring Roy, they can go to the Bell Center. They can go to the Air Canada Centre in Toronto, Bell Centre in Montreal. They can go to Rogers Place in Vancouver. They can go to any major arena in the Great White North, the hockey arenas, the 20,000 seat arenas, and sell it out, I think, in minutes.
Yeah.
They cannot do that with any fighter on their card, past or present, current, future. They have the key to that market if they sign George St-Pierre.
Absolutely.
And no other fighter, in my opinion, right now, as far as a potential free agent, of course, Conor is the key to the world, Ronda, but no other fighter who is close to free agency or possibly a free agent can do that for Bellator or any other organization. If they put a card with George St-Pierre only, forget Rory, forget stacking the deck the rest of the way. If it's the return of GSP, the Bell Center, which once held around 24,000, I think, for UFC 124, GSP Koscheck 2, is sold out in minutes, in my opinion. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that is massive.
It is. I mean, obviously, it depends on the price that he would need, but there's no question that his fans will travel. It's just, what does that mean?
But they don't even travel. Like, you're going to Montreal, that's his hometown.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
His fans will show up, is what I meant, not travel. But it also, how does this impact the TV product? Do you completely, revamp the organization and focus on GSP? There's so much fallout. There's so much impact that this would potentially have, that it's an incredibly it's incredibly uncharted. This experiment, if it were to come true, if it were to come to fruition, is going to be absolutely gripping. Everybody's going to tune in for that and see. I think it will be very impactful in the future of how this type of thing goes. It will be a trendsetter once again.
Sure, and not 100% uncharted in the sense that Randy Couture had a situation with the UFC where they went to court and it didn't end up well for him. I do believe that. Oh, look, a very good tweet here from Matt Brown, not the fighter. A longtime MMA journalist, now no longer works in the sport, but still works in media. George St-Pierre's attorney, James Quinn, has been the lead on cases involving NBA and NFL players re-free agency, knows the space well. Again, he's not like, I know his team, I know his managers, I know the guys behind him. They don't speak out of turn. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm not saying that the UFC is not going to have something to say. I'm not saying that this is going to be like a walk in the park and he's going to be fighting, on Spike tomorrow. But if they're coming out and saying this, I feel pretty good that they've done their due diligence, and maybe it's a little different than the Randy Couture situation in that regard. But
also, I think the landscape is different. These megastars are much more important now. At the time, that it was Randy Couture, it felt like there were more stars, but they had less individual impact, if that makes sense. There were more stars, there were more names, there were more faces in MMA, but the sport wasn't as driven by one individual fighter in the same way it is now, with the Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey, and now potentially GSP, if that still remains the case, where their importance is elevated to an incredible degree. And I think I don't think there's anything like this. I really don't.
Two other thoughts. I think a lot of people were thinking when WME-IMG and the group of investors bought the UFC for $4 billion, they're like, oh, wow, now we're going to make it. And it was a very interesting thing because finally a number had been attached to the sport. Mm-hmm. I think that they're actually going to try to recoup that money in the sense of cutting back shows, which is the word, doing less internationally, not paying for big name free agents, letting people like Chael and maybe a GSP walk away. So, they got to get the money back. They got to get into the black. They don't want to be in the red. And that is a big investment with a big loan. There's a lot of money at stake here. And I think that's very interesting. I also think it's interesting that, this idea that, okay, George St-Pierre last fought in 2011, when was it? When was UFC 167? Was it 2013? Signed a contract in 2011. I believe he has like 4 fights left. This idea that, okay, if you don't fight, your contract gets frozen. I don't know how fair that is, A, and B, especially when the landscape of the particular promotion that the contract is tied to completely changes. Reebok, no sponsorships, USADA, TV deals. It can't be frozen for one side and not for the other. GSP was allowed to wear any sponsor he wanted. And that's why he signed that deal, because he could do this and that. But then to come back and say, okay, we're going to still pay you this amount, but you can't do these other things, it doesn't really work. You know what I mean? And I think this is also being brought to light as the sport continues to change. Guys are taking breaks and coming back into this new world. Fascinating time. Unbelievable. And Conor has done a lot here in terms of bringing this stuff to the forefront, having this be a part of the discussion. Guys becoming a lot more financially conscious. I don't think it has anything to do with the GSP situation, but it is literally evolving in front of our eyes. The sport is changing in front of our eyes. It will not look the same next year. It will not look the same in 6 months. Behind the scenes, in front of the camera. I mean, just look at who's fighting for Bellator now. You know? Could you have ever... I was looking at a picture. I was looking through our gallery. I was looking at a picture of... I was trying to find a picture for George St-Pierre, and I was looking at the media workouts from UFC 167. At the media workouts for UFC 167 was Chael Sonnen, Rory McDonald, Hoist Gracie, George St-Pierre. I was like, who would have ever? Lineup. Yeah, I was like, who ever thought that we would get to this point? Unbelievable.
Now, let's assume. I think this is an interesting question. Let's assume that GSP still has as much drawing power as we think he does. Now, I'm too far inside the MMA bubble to really, be able to objectively think about it, but I think GSP has tremendous drawing power.
Yes.
Let's assume that's correct.
Yes.
Does he need to sign with an organization, or does he do his own thing? Yeah. If he has as much juice as we think, he could be potentially doing his own thing, and that would be unprecedented as well.
Yes. Funny you bring that up. I tweeted this on Saturday. There was an article on themaclife.com, one of my favorite websites, where they were talking about Charlie Ward, not the quarterback, not the Heisman Trophy winner, not the former point guard of the New York Knicks. I was just waiting for all those jokes to roll in. Same spelling, but teammate, friend of Conor McGregor's at SBG Ireland, signing with the UFC, fighting Randy Brown on December 9th in Albany. And they were talking about how Team McGregor is happy and we're bringing in another guy and interesting times for McGregor Inc. and all this stuff. And you go back to that interview where I sat down with Conor prior to 189, when he talked about all this stuff, about kind of being his own promoter and all that. That is the boxing model. And you wonder, with all this stuff happening, if this is going to happen as well in our sport. And I don't know if that is necessarily good, in the sense that, okay, we look at it from a fan perspective. We always like the UFC because all the best were fighting under one umbrella. If things get splintered from a clean, easy way to follow the sport, it changes. But I think from a revenue sharing standpoint, that is a very good thing for the fighters. They get a bigger piece of the pie. Yeah,
and I think there's very few who could kind of lead that charge, but GSP...
Yeah, could you imagine?
Seems like one of them. And he also, one of the things that, there was so much that he said in that interview, but he also touched on the fact that himself, Conor McGregor, Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, guys like that need to be leading the charge.
Sure.
About taking care of other fighters and making sure that they're properly compensated. He mentioned Bisping's compensation. It seems like all of these things are on his mind at the very least. In terms of figuring out a way for fighters to be taken care of. So I don't know. He said so much, but it's going to be, I think this will be the story of...
Wow. In a long line of stories in 2016. What's your prediction? Do we ever see GSP fight again?
I have to think so.
Wow.
Why? Right. Well, why declare your free agency if you don't need... I know you want that card in your back pocket. You want the leverage. You want the ability to do it. But if you weren't really planning on pursuing it, you might just let it fall. Why put yourself through all the hassle? Why go through the effort?
Yeah.
I think he's thinking about it, and that should be enough. And a guy it's not... George left as a champion. George left as probably one of the best ever, if not the best. You got to think he's looking for a challenge, and he's under no obligation to make himself a free agent. So I think that almost says it all.
Yeah, very interesting to sort of declare yourself a free agent, in the sense that, like, Carmelo Anthony, we knew that his contract was up 2 years ago. He doesn't sign any offers. Okay, I'm going to test the market here. You really want to hear what the other side has to say about this.
Yeah.
The sport is so different, and so we await that word. and we see what happens. Massive stuff from GSP. The other big news last week before, and a reminder that in a few minutes we are going to be joined by Jerry the King Lawler, of all people, to talk about Bellator 162 in Memphis this weekend. But Ronda Rousey is back. Was it the right call to put her in the title fight?
I hate these questions because...
Why? If you were in charge, would you bring her back?
The right call, like, was it deserved? Was it the right call?
No.
All these,
if you were in charge,
judgments.
So I'm asking your opinion. If you were in charge, would you bring her back?
If I was the UFC promoting it.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Not do something like Holly Ronda with Pena Nunez as the title, so you get like sort of two for the price of one, so to speak.
No.
Okay.
You put Ronda back in there, and then you play it out from there. Yeah. That's absolutely what I would have done.
Do you agree with the notion that the media treated Ronda unfairly, that we turned on her?
Well, I think referring to the media, quote unquote, is like a cop out. It's just a silly thing. The media is not one entity. There are individual people and writers. Like,
that is true.
I just hate the idea of the quote unquote media being called, out just because I could write something completely different in one newspaper and you could write something opposite what I said, and we'd both be the media.
Sure.
Do I think Ronda was treated unfairly? I think to a certain degree there is an element of that. Not so much that she was treated unfairly, but she wasn't used to this level of backlash. She was the darling, and she was, covered as an inspirational figure and things like that. When she lost, there was coverage of her shortcomings, and she may not have been prepared for that. I don't think it was that anybody had a vendetta against her, but seeing all that coverage potentially could have affected her.
Look, I'm happy that you said it, because you're not, the conventional media member.
I am not a media member, but make no mistake.
I am happy that you say this, because nothing pisses me off more when people paint everyone, a group of people, with one brush.
Yeah.
I think that there is a big distinction between the media and Twitter trolls.
Sure.
Twitter trolls treated her unfairly. Twitter trolls tried to dance on her grave, tried to, kick her while she was down. I think if you go back to the media reaction, we obviously covered it. It was a big deal. We were sort of shocked. We covered it for weeks. We sort of celebrated Holly. We went to Albuquerque to talk to her teammates. But I don't think that we were unfair. I don't think that we were unprofessional. I don't think we hit her below the belt. I don't think we are unhappy that she's back. I don't think we tried to keep her away. So again, I think that there was some confusion there as far as saying the media.
Yeah, I don't think there was any ill will or slant or anything like that, but I do think there's an element of truth to the fact that she may not have been ready for that, and she saw all that coverage of it, because the expectation is that the ride is never going to end. You're going to keep winning. Nobody's expecting to lose. Nobody goes in and prepares to lose, but she was brought so high, and then her fall was also covered, which is the opposite side of that. And she may not have been prepared for that. I don't think there was anything nefarious. I don't think anybody went after her. I don't think anybody attacked. Let me backtrack on that. Maybe somebody did. I didn't see that in particular. But I just think that, it's a difficult thing, and good for her for just now at this point shaking it off and jumping right back into a title fight.